Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to Unfiltered Radio Show by Pastor Jason Gaszak. That is me, and I am glad that you are joining me this morning. Wow, the weather sure has changed from a couple days ago, has it not? I'm not really looking forward to the colder weather, but it seems like it's upon us. So let's just settle into what it is. I want to talk to you today about a bunch of different things. I have totally jacked up my show notes of what I normally do just because of everything going on. Today is literally going to be unfiltered, gone crazy. I think that's the best way to say it. I'm going to be all over the map. I'm just going to be speaking my heart, speaking my mind, speaking my opinions about things that are going on, from the Powerball all the way through COVID, the election, and, we're going to talk about everything. I don't even know where I'm going to go, but just know that we're going to talk about everything. And you even can get a hold of me if you want. You can go to the Real Talk Radio app and you can comment on there. I encourage you to go there. Or you can text me at 314-924-4215. Again, that's 314-924-4215. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. I'd love to know what you got going on and your opinions of what I'm talking about. The first thing I want to talk about is, of course, we're going to talk about the election here in probably segment 3. Okay, I'm gonna talk about some other things first. The first thing I do want to talk about, however, is the Powerball. Holy smokes! I don't really play the Powerball until it gets to like the crazy numbers that we've been seeing. And then I'll go get a couple tickets or something. I'm not real big. I just figured this: you can't win if you don't play. And I think about that. I mean, how cool would it be to win that $2 billion? Somebody won it. Somebody in California. They have not come forward yet. I can't even blame them for not coming forward. We talk about this all the time. My wife really hates it whenever I dream about the Powerball. But I do. I mean, I'm sure you do the same thing. How many of you have actually dreamt about that $2 billion? If you would be a billionaire instantly, overnight, you would be a billionaire. And it's not like you own some business or anything. You just literally be a billionaire, $1 billion worth of cash sitting in the bank or 5 banks or 10 banks somewhere. I don't think you'd want to box it all up and put it in under your mattress. But I always think about, what would I be doing? What would my life look like? And I can tell you right now, it would probably ruin most of us, if not all of us. Powerball, that kind of money it can ruin a person. That's probably why I didn't win, right? Because I know that it would probably ruin me. Now, I would love to have the chance to try it. And I'm sure you're sitting out there thinking the same thing. I mean, who wouldn't want to win that kind of money? I mean, we're talking life change, not just for you and your family, but for pretty much all your family members and your friends. For me, all the different churches, smaller churches that I could donate to and give to for them to do ministry. Think about all those things. But this Powerball winner still has not come forward. I read something recently that said not every ticket that wins that the person comes forward. I'm assuming maybe they lose the ticket or misplace it, which would be losing it. They said that over $800 million has been unaccounted for. Now, my next question is, where is that money going? If there's $800,000 that's unaccounted, or $800 million that's unaccounted for, where is that money and where is it going? Because that is a lot of money that could help a lot of different things. I didn't do the research, so I don't really know where it is, but I can tell you it ain't going where they're saying it's going. I can just tell you that right now, because there just ain't no way. Now listen, if today is your first time listening to Unfiltered, I'll just tell you right now, I'm a pastor out in St. Clair, Missouri, called Roots Church, and this is a platform for me to be able to talk in an unfiltered way. So there's going to be things that you do not like that I'm probably going to say. There's going to be things that you probably do like, and that's good. But here's the deal. Just because I have an opinion about it doesn't really mean that I'm right or wrong necessarily. I just tell people all the time, listen, you have the right to be wrong. Because I do believe that I'm pretty balanced. I do believe that I look at things from a very balanced perspective. So therefore, when I think like that, I think I'm right a lot. I mean, I'm not trying to be boastful or prideful. It's just I really do try to balance things out. And there'll be times I'll say, I really don't know. This is just what I think. I'm not going to be certain on something that I'm not sure about. So in any case, I just thought I'd put that little disclaimer out there as you guys are driving or sitting there drinking your coffee, listening to whoever this crazy person is on the other side of the radio dial or on the app. That's who you get, is me, and that's just who I am. And lottery. I wanted to read just a couple statistics here about the lottery. Probably things that you already know, I'm sure. But there were some things down here pretty interesting of people who have already won the lottery. It says, how much do winners spend on vacations? It says having a luxury vacation is a lot easier with millions in the bank. Millionaire winners found that they spend some $33 million on vacations. The average trip is around 11 grand. Well, it's not hard really to spend $11,000 for a family on a nice trip. That sounds like a lot of money, and believe me, it is a lot of money. And some of you are thinking, there ain't no way I'd ever spend $11,000. Well, depends on what kind of experience you want, depends on how long you've been saving. Will all depend on if you go on a trip like that. As far as homes that are purchased by lottery winners, obviously buying a new home is something that plenty of winners do. As a matter of fact, 3,000 of the winners bought nearly 8,000 new homes, and then they paid off 3,700 mortgages for friends and family. I'm just reading you the statistics. I don't know if any of this is true. I'm just reading it off of creditdonkey.com. Creditdonkey.com. It's lottery winner statistics. That's where I got this from. If you're wondering where I'm getting my wealth of knowledge, it is from the Google tree of knowledge of good and evil. That's what I call it now, which is Google. How often are people buying new cars? Well, in addition to homes, the British winners snapped up more than 17,000 new cars, and the average purchase price of those vehicles was about $73,000. And the most popular brand was an Audi or Range Rover, coming in close second. Well, I can relate to the Audi because I actually have an Audi, and they are very nice cars. And believe me, if you buy them new, they can also be very expensive. So I bought mine very used and got a great deal on it, by the way. So yeah, the lottery. It's funny how the lottery that ticket drawing didn't even happen on whatever it was, Sunday night or Saturday night. They had to wait to be drawn on Monday. Was that not crazy? Or what? Or maybe it was Monday night. It was Monday night. That's right. It was Monday night. Nobody won on Saturday. Monday night was the drawing. It didn't happen until Tuesday morning. That's right. I remember that now. Crazy how they have a strategic plan when it comes to the lottery and how they draw those numbers. But anyway, I want to talk a little bit about the Powerball. I think it's cool how the guy that sold the winning ticket, how he actually was not afraid to come out, and the store, I should say, that bought the winning ticket. It was called Joe's Service Center in southern part of California, which I think is real cool to see this gentleman here. I see a picture of him that won that $1 million. That's going to be life-changing for him. But today, we have a show for you. We are going to be talking a little bit. I want to talk to you about some COVID statistics that came out where I can say I tried to tell you. I told you so. I also want to talk a little bit about the election and how I feel like a lot of us were duped about this red wave that was supposed to take place, this red tsunami. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, I'm going to talk a little bit about Veterans Day, because Veterans Day was just yesterday, or Friday was Veterans Day. And I'm going to do it this day in history, which actually would be the 13th, which is tomorrow. But in any case, because this show is pre-recorded, it airs on Saturday at 7 a.m. for the first time, which many of you are listening right now. But then there's a rebroadcast on Sunday mornings at 8. And so I do this day in history, depending on what it is, depending on what day it is. I will change that up a little bit. So I'm going to actually do the 13th, because it's actually talking about Veterans Day. So anyway, that's what I have for you today in the show. I'm going to be all over the place. I'm going to probably I just want to talk to you today. That's really all I want to do. It's really hard to have these conversations because there's nobody in the room right now. It's just me and you, the listener. I can't see you and I can't hear you, but I know you're there. And maybe for some people, it's easy to have conversations with yourself because that's exactly what it feels like. I feel like I'm talking to myself. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? I can be good at talking to myself. So I have to convince myself sometimes the things that I talk about. And other times I don't have to convince myself at all. But that's just the reality of what it is when you have a radio show. So we're going to take a break. So go ahead and grab that cup of coffee, go to the bathroom. We'll be right back in just a few minutes. All right, we are back from the break, and I hope you're still there. I hope you brought somebody with you into the Unfiltered radio show. And I want to talk to you about an article that I came across this past week. You know, in the very beginning when COVID first came out, I was not buying what they were putting down. I literally had reservations the whole entire time about how serious COVID was. Now remember, I got COVID in July, at the end of July in 2021. I got COVID and I was hospitalized. So I'm not saying that I wasn't sick, and I'm not saying that it can't put you in the hospital, and I'm not saying that it couldn't kill you. I'm not saying any of that. But the way they described this thing in the very beginning was out of control. And I even said in the very beginning, I guarantee you can go back to one of my messages back in February, I should say, of 2020 when all this came about. I remember saying it very clearly in my message. There is no way anyone can be sure of how dangerous or not dangerous this virus was in that short a time. There was not enough data, there was not enough statistics, there was not enough knowledge about what we were dealing with and what was going on for anybody to know for sure. And I understand that a lot of people believe that the government was just trying to protect the people, but I didn't believe that in the very beginning. I thought it was a big joke, and therefore, you know, I had a lot of ridicule. I had a lot of people upset with me because we only shut down for the 8 weeks 6 weeks, I guess it was, 6 or 8 weeks that President Trump asked us to shut down to slow the curve. And that's what we did. But after that, we went full force. And I remember just people shutting everything down. The schools were closing. I mean, everything was closing. And they just thought that, you know, that was the right thing to do. And so this article that came out was, it says school closures didn't reduce the number of child COVID deaths, data indicates. So now here we are 2 years later, or really a year later, and now we're finding out that closing down the schools did not change or reduce the number of children that died because of COVID. And they look at all these different schools of who closed and how long they stayed closed and what their restrictions were, all the way to the ones that didn't shut down and kept meeting in person classrooms. As a matter of fact, I read something super crazy, a statistic. I'm trying to find it as I'm talking to you, but I know it's in here somewhere about, let's see here. I know that schools like Wyoming, they stayed open. They didn't hardly have any child deaths. But there were others, obviously, that did have a few, but there was nothing that showed us that shutting the schools down were going to keep kids from dying. Here's what I found. Across the country, COVID was negligible cause of child mortality. The data shows for every child that died with COVID, nearly 50 children died from other reasons. So we're shutting the world down for COVID, where one child may pass away, but 50 children were dying from other causes. Does that not blow your mind of how the CDC and the government literally got us all to be so fearful of COVID to the place where we weren't sending our kids to school and nobody was going anywhere and people were working from home, when God gave us our immune system to fight viruses naturally, as long as you're in good health, as long as you're eating properly. All these things obviously matter. I'm not the most healthy person in the world, but I do try to allow my immune system to work the way God created it to work, which is to fight disease and viruses. I mean, when you get the common cold, you got enough good stuff in you to fight it, or you take a lot of vitamin C that obviously helps fight it. I use those emergency packs. Those things are unbelievable in my opinion. Emergencies. It's a little pack of powder. It's like 1,000 whatever milligrams or something like that of vitamin C. I pop 2 of those open, rip them open, and put them in a cup of water, and I drink those, and I probably do 2 or 3 of those a day. And sure enough, I don't ever seem to have any issues. But here we are, a year, 2 years later, still talking about COVID. And ladies and gentlemen, this ain't going away. We're going to be talking about the COVID results for a very long time. And the truth is starting to come out. We're starting to see even more of how the vaccine doesn't keep you from getting COVID. We already know that. But yet still they're pushing for you to get the vaccine. I said a couple of weeks ago how there was an article coming out that the very worst COVID strand has now reared its face, and it's most deadly that we've ever seen. But as long as you get the Moderna shot or the Pfizer shot of vaccine, you're gonna survive. Again, trying to push this vaccine on people, and I don't fully understand why. I actually do understand why. I just don't understand how people can have the mentality and the capacity to believe the stupidity that is out there. Why are we so dumb at times? Listen, please don't take offense to that. I mean, but there are just stupid people out there. Ignorance, man. I mean, ignorance of not educating yourself on what is going on and just believing everything you see and everything you hear and everything you read. Listen, we have to start researching this stuff on our own. We cannot always believe what somebody is telling us, because guess what? They don't always have our best interest at hand. No, they don't. You have to watch for yourself. You and your family, you have to protect what that looks like. And these people are still pushing it. Why? Because there's money in that vaccine. There's money in those booster shots. And believe me, the government and these big pharma people and anybody that's linked to them are making millions and millions of dollars off of it. And Americans are just sitting back watching it happen. They ain't done a thing about it. They just keep on going after it because of fear. And listen, I'm just saying, if you got the shot, good for you. That's your business. I don't care one way or the other. I'm just telling you, I'm not going to allow the government or the CDC or the media to try to put fear in me, to make a decision, to put something foreign in my body that I do not want, and to be forced to do that is absolutely against my constitutional rights. That is where I draw the line. And we've already talked about it, but I've said it before. It takes a few bold people to stand against what our world tries to push on us. And when those people stand against it and have an opinion about it, boy, are we're canceled. Cancel culture we live in. Well, guess what? Go ahead and try it. It is what it is. I don't have to prove to you anything. I don't live my life for you. I live it for me and my family. And I try to direct and guide people in the way that I live my own life. And if you don't want to do that, then you don't have to do that. Nobody's forcing you to do it. Well, COVID, still seeing the data coming out that is completely contradictory to what the government has told us from day one. We'll be right back in just a few minutes. All right, and we are back in our third segment, and now it's time to talk about the election. What a complete disappointment. I get very, very passionate about what I believe in and what I believe we should do as believers. And I'm very outspoken when it comes to voting, being registered to vote, and voting for godly principles and values. People always ask, what are you doing? What are you voting for? What amendments do you believe in? And why do you believe a certain way? And I'm a huge advocate of it. And I don't think people should have the right to their opinion or argue in politics if you're not even a registered voter. Now, if you want to talk to me about why I vote so I can convince you of how important it is for you to vote, I'm good. I'll talk to you about that all day long. But if you want to argue with me about why you believe what you believe and how you can't stand whoever it is, whatever side of the party you're on, and you're not a registered voter, I'm just not going to waste my time talking to you. Not about politics. I care about you. Well, I care about you. I just don't want to talk to you about politics because to me, you can't even go out and register to vote and exercise your right as an American to put things into place. Then I just don't have time for that. I'm just not going to do it. And when it came on Tuesday night, I stayed up till midnight watching the results. And I was just completely, disappointed. I was completely disappointed that these midterms did not show us a wave of red. That people aren't pissed off enough about our economy, about inflation, about the safety of our country, that you just don't see what has been going on the last couple of years. You're not mad enough to actually realize that even with COVID, that shut things down and ruined our economy. And then the government says, oh, here, we'll give you some money to help you out. Are you serious right now? You think that measly little $1,200 or $1,500 check that we got really changed my life? Not even close. And now they're wanting to do it again. The government is wanting to do it again. They want to do more stimulus checks right now because of inflation. And there are states that are doing it. I just don't understand the thinking of people and how in the world you can be okay with that. How in the world do you not think that we are going to pay for that? Just like student debt relief, we are going to pay for that somewhere. How do you think the government is getting the money to do this? They're doing it right now, 8%, at least 8% inflation. They're getting it. They're figuring out ways to do it, and then we're paying for it. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And the conservatives did not show up. They must not have been very sincere. They didn't have good enough candidates. Whatever the case may be, they blew it in this election. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of great things that did happen. I mean, we flipped a lot of seats. Florida was a prime example of what this looked like. I mean, they blew it out of the water. First time in, I don't remember, like the early 80s since Miami actually voted in a Republican. So Florida is doing great things. Texas is doing great things. Missouri had a great night. There are states that are actually, looking pretty good. And when you look, though, at the other states, and you look at the way people are voting, ladies and gentlemen, there is a reason why we have to be super passionate about voting and educating ourselves on what's going on. Just like Amendment 3, it passed and it shouldn't have passed. I'm not against legalizing marijuana necessarily, but let's just make it a law. Let's not amend the Constitution to make it a law. Because guess what? 3-5 years from now, when things don't go as planned as everyone that voted yes thought, because they only thought that it was going to legalize marijuana, but they didn't realize the extra 38 pages that were tacked onto it, the Trojan horse of amendments, I'm going to tell you, you voted for that. I'm going to tell you this is what you wanted because you didn't educate yourself on the behind the scenes of what this amendment actually stood for. I'm going to tell you you chose this because you did. Because you're not educating yourself. You're not figuring out. All you see is what looks good on the front page, and that is let's legalize marijuana. Well, guess what? You got what you wanted. And I can tell you 3 to 5 years from now, we're going to pay the price for that amendment. And then we're going to cry about it. And then we're going to complain. And there ain't going to be an easy way to change it back. Because you are impatient and you're not making the legislators do their job. They should have formed a law instead of allowing some group of people who has an agenda of nothing but making money off of marijuana and monopolizing on it, but making it look real pretty for all the people that don't educate themselves to vote for it because all they see is legalizing it. That's just an example of the crap that I saw on Tuesday night, not including in the races that we saw. There just wasn't very good, strong candidates out there. Obviously, people didn't believe in the candidates. And the Democrats, they were quiet all night long. Why? Because they thought they were going to get stomped. They didn't get stomped, and it's not over. I mean, we still have a chance. We absolutely still have a chance to have one seat majority vote in the Senate and have a slight majority in the House. There is a chance that Republicans can control both, but it just wasn't what I was expecting at all. I was expecting a red wave. I was expecting for the people to rise up against what is actually going on in front of us, to see what they're voting for. But evidently it's not bad enough for some. Evidently they're still thinking about their pocketbook. Evidently that's all they can see is what their pocketbook is telling them. Well, I don't know if you I text our staff group, and I was teasing them about a red wave. And then I texted them the next day, and I sent them a red drop, because that was what it was more like, is a red drop. It wasn't no red wave at all. I mean, I am just completely disappointed in the results of this election. Not to say there wasn't some good things that came out of it, no doubt. Not to say that we may not still control the House and the Senate, but the results were astonishing considering the state of our country and the stock market. Just look at the stock market the next day. It literally like almost crashed the next day when it wasn't a red wave. Even the stock market knows what's coming up. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Well, here's an interesting quote from Ronald Reagan, and maybe some of you will get this. Maybe you won't. I don't know. I'm starting to lose hope and faith in the American people, to be honest with you. That doesn't mean I'm not going to stop and I'm not going to quit fighting, because even though it wasn't a red wave and even though people voted yes on Amendment 3, I will not stop getting the word out. I will not stop teaching people on godly principles and godly values on the way to vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. If you ask me who I'm voting for, I'm going to tell you. But I'm not going to tell you how to vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. That is up to you. That is between you and God and only. That's not the kind of people we're. But I'm going to be vocal about why I vote the way I do. I'm going to be vocal about the way I believe. Does that mean that I don't love people that don't vote the way I do or believe? No, that doesn't mean that. I still love you as a person. I just don't agree with your values or your policies. And that's what makes America great, is we should be able to still care for each other and love each other and hang out. Well, kind of hang out, still be, acquaintances or friends, even if we don't have the same political values. Here's what Ronald Reagan said. I believe it was right before Jimmy Carter, the 1980 election. He was in a debate with Jimmy Carter, basically. Ronald Reagan was. And he said, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" That's the question you need to ask yourself. Are you better off right now than you were 2 years ago? Oh, I already know the answer to that. The answer is absolutely no. We are not better off. We're not. Everything is higher. People are scrounging to make ends meet. The cost of goods have gone through the roof. The pay has stayed the same, and things are costing us more. Gas costs us more. Eggs cost us more. Meat costs us more. All the products we buy at the store, paper products, are costing us more. Everything has gone up, and it's insane what people have to deal with. So just ask yourself that question next time before you go vote. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Those are the questions that we need to be asking ourselves. We do absolutely do need to teach from the pulpit, from the stage, from the microphone to Christians in the church, from the church, on what it means to vote and how we vote. There's no doubt it needs to be taught. I do believe there is a way to do it. I do believe that people will listen. I just don't think they're educated. That's the struggle. People don't know what to look for. They don't know how to vote or why they vote. I mean, when you look at, there's 5 reasons why Christians will avoid politics. They'll avoid talking about politics this Thanksgiving. I've only got a couple minutes left in this segment. I'll probably just pick this in the next segment. But Christians are going to avoid talking about what has happened this past midterm. Not at my house, not with my family. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about what we have to do as a family to do better at getting the word out, to do better at educating people. Because one of the biggest issues is the moral majority from the 1980s on. The church is always going to be forever linked to the Republican Party. Well, and the reason why is they're the only party that actually comes close to Christian values. I mean, if you look at the Democrats, the majority of their stance of 5 top things are against the Word of God of what we believe as Christians. And the Republican Party is the only other party. I don't really consider myself Republican. I consider myself a conservative Christian. I'm a conservative. I want to kind of be in the middle of both. I think we can learn from both sides. But right now, I'm just looking at the left, and it's just insane of what they believe and what they think we should be doing as people. And so this is why it's going to be hard for us, because no matter what, we're going to be linked to the Republican Party no matter how this thing looks. And when Christians stand up against something, when we don't agree, like with abortion or gay marriage, we're always against it, right? When we stand against, and I'm going to explain that here in just a minute, because I want you to understand what I mean by that. It doesn't mean that I don't care about the person that had the abortion. I'm just not for having an abortion. It's not that I don't care about the people that want to have a gay marriage. I just don't support gay marriage. Listen, we'll be back in just a moment. I'll continue the conversation. Don't go nowhere, and we'll see you here in just a few minutes. All right, we're back. That was a short break. We're going to wrap this radio show up. We got about 10 minutes to do so. I hope you stay with me to talk about this. And I'm talking about 5 reasons why Christians avoid politics, especially this November, especially with Thanksgiving coming up, especially with Christmas getting around family. And so whenever we look at Christians, we've been talking about this. It seems like when we disagree with abortion or like the subject of gay marriage, that we're always against something. And I want to make sure you understand that I do not support gay marriage, and I definitely do not support abortions. I definitely do not support socialism. I definitely do not support our taxes being raised. There's just certain things that I don't agree with. And when I'm looking at candidates, I'm looking at a lot of these top 5 values. A third reason why Christians avoid politics is because politics is bad, offensive, and divisive. That's what people think, that it's bad. Politics are bad. Listen, we need more Christian people in politics. We need more Christian values in our government to help us stand for what we believe in. And it's offensive. You know, people think it's offensive for you to believe the way you do. And yeah, it can be divisive depending on how you handle it. I don't want it to be divisive, but it can be divisive. This is why, here at Roots Church, We're not afraid to say what we believe. We're not afraid to say we're a conservative church, but does that mean we don't accept liberals? Does that mean we don't accept Democrats that come to the church, and that doesn't mean that we're not going to love them and care for them? No, we will. Now, I can't hardly understand how you can be, a Democrat and yet still believe in the Bible or yet still carry out the godly principles when they are for abortion and when they are for transgenders and gay marriage and they're for all of that. I don't know how you can stand behind that. It's just confusing to me. Here's the fourth reason why Christians avoid politics is because the church and the state are to be separate. That's what and it is supposed to be separate. But let me read something to you. The courts have used the infamous separation phrase to ban religious activities, primarily those promoting Christian principles. Sadly, though, many believe that the separation of church and state appears in the Constitution when, in reality, the phrase does not appear anywhere in the Constitution. Wow. We got to be very clear on this point, especially if you are a student in a public school or university or even at a Christian university. Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence, used the phrase in 1802 in a private letter written to the Baptist Association of Danbury, Connecticut. The Baptists feared that the government might someday try to regulate religious expression. Wow! Imagine that. Back in the 1800s, even the Baptists feared that the government would someday try to regulate their expression of how they freely worship. Do we not see that today? Absolutely we do. The government, and they try to hold the tax-exempt status over our heads. Oh, well, we're going to take that away if you don't do X, Y, and Z. Whatever. Go ahead and try. This is crucial for us to understand. The spirit in which the First Amendment was written, the colonists, the pilgrims, they did not want the government imposing a national religion or denomination on the people. They wanted to worship freely, and Mr. Jefferson wisely agreed with them, as did many of the other founders. His statement was intended to protect religious expression by building a wall of separation between the church and state, solidifying the fact that the federal government could not strike down religious freedoms. Aren't you glad that the government cannot establish a national religion, but it can openly and unapologetically acknowledge the sovereign hand of God? Because acknowledgement is not establishment. And ladies and gentlemen, I believe people in our government who in the past are believers, who are Christians, absolutely acknowledge that everything that is done is by the sovereignty of God. Here's the last reason why Christians avoid politics, and that's because the gospel doesn't allow for politics. It's not our mission. That's what they believe. The number one problem in America is not a political problem, but it's a spiritual problem, and it's called sin. The primary goal of the church is to not become a political movement, but a spiritual influence. We don't want to be known at Root Church as a Republican church. We don't want to be known as a church as a conservative church. We want to have a spiritual influence on people that are projecting godly values and principles. That's what we want. Politics are not going to save America any more than a dumbbell will save anyone from drowning. But we cannot ignore our God-given responsibility and the enormous impact that politics do have on our society. We as Americans, as leaders, we play a big role in shaping the direction of our country. And God's word says to confront and to confess and to turn from sin. And we cannot allow political hot buttons. We cannot avoid them. We shouldn't say or do anything political necessarily. All we need to do is preach the gospel. No, No, we want both. We want to preach the gospel, but we also want people to be educated. The gospel's got to be the primary focus. But if we can't ignore the government, we can't ignore the political side of things that goes hand in hand with that. Why in the world would God talk about it? Why would he ordain a government such as ours in America and not ask for us to be involved? I mean, my main calling as a pastor is to preach God's word, is to give hope to people that are lost and hurting. That's my main goal, is to take as many people to heaven before we die, period. That's our mission statement. But my other calling is to help educate people, to get involved into politics, to help us shape and weave in and out the fabric of the Bible into politics to where we can live in a great nation, in a great country with good standards and values. That's really what we want more than anything. Martin Luther said, "Where the battle rages, there the loyalty of the soldier is tested." And guess what? This battle is for the very soul of our nation. It's our choice as Christians, whether we stand or we fall. And even though we did not have a red wave the way we were expecting it to happen, guess what? That doesn't mean we will quit. It means we need to regroup. It means we have work to do to educate young people that obviously just vote the way their parents vote, or obviously just vote for the thing that they think they want. But we need to educate them, to let them and get them to understand that there are consequences for us not fully engaging and fully understanding what these amendments and what these politicians stand for. And believe me, I'm not saying it's easy, because there are a lot of people that say one thing and they do something different. That's why politicians have that persona that they can never be trusted. That is really sad that we think that way about politicians and that way about preachers. Literally, I heard a guy tell me one time, he said, "There's only two people that I don't trust. It's politicians," actually he said three, politicians, lawyers, and preachers. Why do those three people have that persona? Why in the world do people think that way about them? Well, it's because of the actions of those people. So we've got work to do. We've got to educate people. Yes, we do. Well, listen, I don't have much time left, and I just want to recognize Veterans Day, because I don't have this show but on, once a week on a Saturday, and I just want to say happy Veterans Day out there. Post-Veterans Day to all of you veterans that are listening to this show. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for us to allow us to have the freedom that we have to vote and our expression of free speech. If it wasn't for you men and women out there who have died and who have fought for our country, we wouldn't be where we are today. So thank you. And I will tell you that this day in history, on November 13th, 1982, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial was dedicated. How cool was that? And it has inscribed 57,939 Americans who died in the conflict, and they were arranged in order of death, not rank, but they're put on that memorial. Let's thank our veterans today. We're out of time. When you see one, thank them for what they've done. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next time. Have a great weekend. Love you all. Peace out.